Hello, are we ready to start? Hello and welcome everyone to our brand new webinar series for Recycling Week. This is the first time we're running Recycling Week, which is very, very exciting for us. Sorry, the first time we're running a webinar for Recycling Week. And we are partnered with thinkstep, who will be running the whole series this week. And to kick us off today, they're actually taking us through Procurement Monday. Now, Procurement Monday is the first daily focus for Recycling Week, and it is very much about focusing on what we purchase and making sure the materials that we do source are made to be recycled, reused, or repurposed, because when we buy anything, we also buy any waste associated with it. Now, thinkstep are going to take us through a little bit of responsible procurement and a little bit on what circular economy means and how we can actually achieve a more successful procurement in line with recyclability. Now over to you, David.
Thank you, Nat. Hi, everyone. My name is David Klein. I'm a Senior Sustainability Communicator at thinkstep-anz. We're very pleased to be working with Reclaim for New Zealand Recycling Week as the webinar partners. thinkstep-anz, if you haven't heard of us, we're an independent sustainability firm with offices in New Zealand and Australia. We've been helping businesses from many industries succeed sustainably for the past 15 years. We offer services in sustainability strategy and technical solutions to make products, businesses, and the built environment more sustainable. I think especially relevant to today and this week. We deal with strategies for responsible procurement, looking at packaging and the circular economy. So for responsible procurement Monday, if you're maybe unsure about procurement, it kind of means the same as purchase or buying. We've put together a little need to know about responsible procurement, which can help you out. I'll share a link to that shortly. But an organization procures responsibly when the goods and services it buys are made in environmentally and socially responsible ways. Responsible procurement benefits businesses, the environment, people, and communities. Pretty good stuff. Just some quick housekeeping for our webinar. Attendees are in listen-only mode, so thank you for joining us, but to ensure quality audio, you'll just be listening in. We would, though, like this to be an interactive webinar, so if you have any questions, please type them in the question box, the Q&A one at the bottom of your screen. We'll answer these in the webinar or at the end. Please don't use the chat function. This won't save your question if we don't have time to answer it live. And finally, this webinar is being recorded, and we should have it up on the Reclaim YouTube channel later this week. So it's no problem if you need to pop out or if you'd like to share this recording with a friend or colleague later. So for Procurement Monday, we're joined by Nicole Sullivan. She is the Head of Impact and Strategy Australia from thinkstep-anz. Nicole works with clients on many projects, including sustainability strategy, green building, and responsible procurement. She and I spoke last month for a short blog, and like she said, responsible procurement is about being socially and environmentally responsible. Every company has suppliers, and we help them develop a strategy to engage with those suppliers collaboratively so they can succeed together. There are so many opportunities in procurement, which I think is very true. So I'm going to pass over to Nicole Sullivan.
Thank you very much, David. I'll just grab the screen share. Bear with me while I make sure I get the right one. There we go. It's wonderful to be with you today. Thank you for joining us, and hopefully there'll be lots more people who get to see this online as well. Thank you for the intro to responsible procurement. I certainly don't need to talk too much about what that is, but what I want to do is go next level and talk about what do we mean by responsible procurement. So procurement is really about buying things. It's about purchasing. So it's very supply chain oriented. But what do we mean when we talk about being responsible? So very importantly, in Recycling Week, we want to acknowledge the importance of environmental impacts associated with our supply chain. And so the circularity of products is incredibly important, but also that there are a number of other issues regarding environmental impact that we might want to be aware of when we're making those purchasing decisions. Things like water use and climate change as well might come into those considerations. But sustainability isn't just, or responsibility isn't just about the environment, it's also about people. And people are in a variety of circumstances. They can be our employees, they can be our communities, or indeed they can be in our supply chain as well. So how are we impacting on the people engaging in our supply chain? And then there's economic sustainability. Nothing is truly sustainable if it's not economically sustainable. Business needs to be able to function in a sustainable, ongoing manner. But some of these other things wrap around and actually form part of consideration of economic sustainability as well. So if you think about climate change, quite often we might think about what our impacts on the climate are. But when we're talking about responsible procurement, we also should be thinking, what impacts can climate change have on our ability to remain sustainable as a business? What impacts can climate change have if major weather events occur within our supply chain? And how does that impact our ability to function? Now, all of those three sustainability drivers then get wrapped up in governance, and governance is really where responsible procurement sits. It's the system that enables us to be able to manage those sustainability attributes. Now, we talk about this in a business context, but you can actually use this every day as well. We can use it in the supermarket when we're deciding what to buy, what to use, where things come from. Are we buying locally and supporting our community? Are we buying internationally? What kind of bags are we using when we go shopping? I'm in the middle of buying a car at the moment. How does my purchasing decision for a car become responsible? How do I think about the circularity of the car versus its impact on climate change versus my own economic sustainability, for example? So really important decisions to be making every day when we think about responsible purchasing in our own worlds. Now, the benefits of responsible procurement, if we flip back more towards a commercial lens, we can manage our supply chain risks. So if you understand what's happening in your supply chain, then you can manage those risks. But without understanding what's happening, it's very hard to understand even what risks you're exposed to, much less how those risks might affect you as a business. You can see here there are a variety of things that we've seen, and certainly supply chain vulnerability is something which has become really key within Australasia, particularly in terms of international supply chains as well. Clearly, we want to reduce our environmental impacts. So we want to be able to be looking at the circularity of what we're doing. Can this be genuinely reused? Hopefully, or if not, then recycled, repurposed into another life. I have a personal vendetta on the word waste. I think that waste is a misnomer. I think actually we're just dealing with resources that are passing into the next frame of life, and we're not actually dealing with genuine waste. Waste is something that actually needs to come out of our vocabulary, and it's about resource management. We can look at our social impacts as well. And as we explore our supply chains, sometimes we find things that actually aren't very savoury. We can find modern slavery, but we can find a number of things that without asking the questions, without investigating our supply chains, we're actually just unaware of. Costs are obviously a big thing. Commercially, we always want to make sure that we are managing our costs. And one of the best ways to manage your supply chain cost is actually to understand what the risks and opportunities are there. Likewise, with our, with our brand, we want to make sure that we're understanding how our procurement decisions actually influence how we are perceived as a company. And what we're seeing now, particularly over the last couple of years, is that brands with purpose are growing, as Unilever is saying here, that we're seeing more and more people gravitating towards brands that stand for something beyond just a product or service that they're selling. Likewise, that then supports relationship building, and those relationships are both internal and external. We actually have critical relationships with our employees. So the next generation of employees that are now coming into the market, they want to work for companies that stand for more than just what you see on the surface. They want to have purpose in what they're doing, and by having a responsible procurement system in place, that helps you to be able to answer their need. But also, it's about your brand in terms of your customers and your community. What do you stand for as a company? And how do they then interpret what you're doing in terms of where they're at? And frankly, it's just the right thing to do, isn't it? And while altruism isn't something that is ever going to drive the bottom line of a business, by doing the wrong thing, we can destroy it. And so what we need to do is make sure that our business actions are aligned with the way that we actually perceive that business ought to be operating, and particularly the way that our stakeholders perceive that business ought to be operating. Now, what we do here at thinkstep-anz is we work with companies to develop a responsible procurement framework and system. We talk with them about what matters for them and how they build a system around that. So the first thing that we work with companies on is to develop responsible procurement guiding principles. And this is something that you should be looking at in terms of what you do every day. Now, some companies are quite advanced on this. Some companies know these are our values. This is what we want to prioritise. But some are not quite so far along, and actually that's okay. What you can do is start to work out what matters to you from a sustainability point of view. And if that seems like it's all a bit big to try to tackle, the thing that we do is we actually use the Sustainable Development Goals as a framing system to help us to get started. So we work with companies generally doing an SDG, Sustainable Development Goals workshop, where it's just a neat, packaged, cost-effective way to actually explore what are your values as a company? Where do you actually interact with sustainability as a company? Is this something that is actually relevant intrinsically to what you do as a company, or is it a bolt-on on the side? And I'm yet to strike a company where sustainability actually just fits as a bolt-on, because in the end, sustainability is actually about business excellence. So we use the SDGs to develop the values of a company, and then that helps you to develop those guiding principles as to how you want to do procurement. Now, it's important to note that there isn't a cookie cutter set of principles that you should use for responsible procurement. Well, to be honest, on the web, there probably is something out there somewhere. But my recommendation is that you do what makes sense for your business in your way with what matters to your stakeholders. There's no point in doing something generic and vanilla that actually doesn't have meaning for your company. Make sure that what you do is thoroughly centered on your purpose as a business and on where you actually need to have impact and results. After we set up the principles, we then look at a supplier code of conduct. What is it that you're expecting from your suppliers? What are the deal breakers where you say, unless you're doing this, say complying with laws, if you're not doing this, we're not okay with you being our supplier. Or for a lot of things, we expect that you're going to be doing this. We expect you're going to be working towards that. So what are those things, and how can you communicate that succinctly to your suppliers? Once you've got a supplier code of conduct, we then work on a supplier questionnaire. So how do you know as a business what your suppliers are doing, where they stand on certain issues? Do they have data to give you on how they conduct business? And so we work on a supplier questionnaire to ask your suppliers to tell you how they line up with that supplier code of conduct, and particularly with your values as an organisation. We then have a supplier evaluation process. Now, this is really key. I see a lot of companies who they might have a supplier code of conduct, they might have a supplier questionnaire, and then they get the questionnaire back and they say, what the heck do I do with this now? I've got all this information. What do I do with this? And that's where a clear evaluation process is so critical. Your procurement people are not likely to be sustainability experts. What they need is to know what to do with the answers that they get. Now, just a key pointer here is we don't think that you should just drop your suppliers if they don't comply with something. This isn't about having a big stick to beat suppliers with. This is about working collaboratively, about succeeding together, about helping each other get a leg up in the market in terms of sustainability, noting that sustainability covers everything: environmental, social, and economic. So when you're looking at what your supplier responses are, it's how can you work together, A, that your risks are covered and that you know where things are, but B, how can you leverage opportunities together to actually build a more sustainable supply chain together? So once you've got all that stuff in place, this next bit is actually critical. You need to be able to communicate really effectively with both your suppliers and your customers about what you're doing with your responsible procurement system. Your suppliers need to know what on earth you expect of them and what your expectations are, what your guiding principles are as to how you're going to interact with your suppliers. But your customers also need to know that you're doing this. They need to know that you're a responsible supplier for them. And they also need to know what they can expect from you and how what you're doing is managing their risk or potentially creating opportunity for them. So what do you look for? If you're just starting to look at your suppliers and go, well, I might need time to get all this in place. Where can I start? There are some key things that you can look for in terms of supplier responsibility. And these things are done more by the leading suppliers in the market at the moment. The first one is environmental product declarations. If you're buying products, there are a lot of companies across New Zealand and Australia that now do have environmental product declarations. So EPDs contain information on the environmental impacts of products across a whole range of indicators, including how much reused content is within or recycled content is within a product. So there is a required indicator in there. Sometimes EPDs can be a bit hard to decode. So if you need help, please reach out. But yeah, there's over 100 EPDs in the market just in terms of this local region of the world here. Other things to look out for, things like cradle-to-cradle certification. So cradle-to-cradle certification is very holistic. It covers material ingredients in products. It covers just one section on circularity. So kind of a fifth of cradle-to-cradle is just about circularity. It covers energy and greenhouse gas emissions, water and soil stewardship, and social accountability as well. So it's lovely and holistic and a really leading certification. And also B corporations. If you're dealing with a company that's a certified B corporation, that you know that they're working hard on a whole range of sustainability initiatives. Just before I wrap up, just a quick case study on something that we've done with Eagle Lighting. So Eagle Lighting are, surprise, a lighting supplier working across New Zealand and Australia. We worked with Eagle Lighting actually on all of their sustainability journey and particularly in responsible procurement. Now, Eagle Lighting already were doing a lot of great work in sustainability. What they needed to do was work out how to put it together and communicate it and integrate it into their procurement system. And so this is off the Eagle Lighting website, but they're really looking to embed all three of those sustainability pillars in what they're doing. In their sustainability brochure that they have a little section on responsible procurement, but we worked with them on actually doing all of those things that I talked about before. And they've really worked to embed sustainability into their procurement system. They start with their tier 1 suppliers and then they're working through as they go. You don't have to be perfect when you start, but actually having a really good go is actually what's most important. I'd really just like to finish off with what they've got in the second column of this, maybe because I wrote it. It says working closely with our suppliers and partners provides the best opportunity to create meaningful impact on key sustainability issues. We believe at Eagle Lighting and also at thinkstep-anz that through collaboration and encouragement across the supply chain, suppliers and partners benefit from reduced operating and reputational risks. Ultimately, we believe that what is good for the planet and people is good for business. And that's why responsible procurement actually works really well in terms of business excellence. David, I might pass back to you for the Q&A.
Thank you, Nicole. Super stuff. I'm a big fan of Eagle Lighting. I think they've done really great work. I just shared a link to read more about what they've been up to.
Awesome.
Yeah, I guess with ThinkStep, we do talk a lot about business supply chain and things like that. You also did touch on your own example of buying a car or supermarket shopping. Do you think you can sort of bring some of that thinking of like code of conduct or like values thinking to individual decisions that you make or as a family?
Definitely. I think it's really important to take stuff that we spruik at work, particularly someone like me who works in sustainability, and look at how that actually impacts the decisions that we make as people and as families. And it's a whole range of things. So yes, it's about what you buy in terms of the supermarket, about, you know, do I choose to buy local produce, for example, if I can, because buying local produce, it supports our local community. It also reduces transport impact of products. So there are multiple benefits to that. It also comes down to what setting I put my air conditioning or heating on. That's actually a procurement decision because it dictates how much energy I purchase, and whether that energy is renewable or high renewable or not, it's still energy that we're taking out of the grid. You know, it's whether I choose to put solar panels on my roof. Newsflash, I do. But it's all of those little decisions that we make in terms of whole of life that really have that impact.
Just got a question from an attendee. They ask, what advice do you have on how to successfully educate internal procurement staff about processes or policies and the values that go with them?
I think that's an excellent question. And it is part of the challenge, right? Because sometimes, and I'm not saying that yours are like this, but sometimes procurement staff are quite narrowly focused on the economics and can you deliver on time? And that is really important. And it is important to acknowledge that procurement still needs to have all that stuff in there. And when you mesh in the sustainability aspects with procurement, you're not saying that things like price and delivery don't matter anymore, that quality doesn't matter anymore. They still matter a huge amount. It's just that this stuff matters too. And so I think part of that communication needs to be, we're not saying that the rest of what you do isn't incredibly important. We're just saying that when you're making procurement decisions, some of these things should have a level of weighting in them, or we need to understand that if we're taking risks, we're taking them deliberately. So that's part of it. The other thing is get them involved early. I found, so we did an SDG workshop with Eagle Lighting, and there were procurement team members as well as others involved in that. And they went through the process of actually unpacking their company values together. And when they're part of that decision-making process, that this is something that we value, then they're much more likely to then sign up to wanting to implement the values that they were part of deciding. Sometimes when things just come from top down, it's harder to get people to really buy in a way that they will if they were involved.
Yeah, nice one. I've got a question from Ajith. They ask, would external certification such as Cradle to Cradle or B Corporation be useful for Reclaim? What are the costs to achieve certification? Nat may need to give some background on Reclaim in general, what they do.
Yes, I'll jump in on this one. So Reclaim the experts in recycling. So we do actually have a whole logistics fleet that collects a whole lot of recyclable materials from Wellington, Auckland and Christchurch, process it and then send it through to different processing plants, whether it is local or international, to actually get these materials recycled. Now, a lot of the clients that we deal with are actually looking at that full supply chain process and whether it is getting to your recyclable site. And at Reclaim, it does. We can guarantee that everything that we collect is sorted and it goes to a recycled outcome. Now, Nicole, you're welcome to jump in and say whether you think certification is useful when other businesses externally are looking at getting that certification themselves or understanding their procurement.
Yeah, I think that, so the question was asking about things like cradle to cradle and B Corp. I would think cradle to cradle certification is probably more relevant for your customers than it is for you. That the ultimate product that goes to market is the thing that should carry that certification. My understanding is you're kind of midstream in that process, and so probably less relevant for you. But B Corp is relevant for everyone. And it is certainly something that you can look into, whether you're a large company or small. We are B Corp certified. And it is something that you can do, which just kind of shows that you're stepping up as an organisation and taking responsibility for where you're at. So yeah, that could be something that's useful to get into. In terms of costs to achieve certification, I actually don't know for B Corp, so I have to pass on that. But David, you could potentially find out and pass some information on afterwards. And for cradle to cradle certification, it varies really widely based on the complexity of products. So yeah, it has an extraordinary, like I kind of want to say, you know, it could, for an incredibly intense product, it could cap out at, you know, many tens of thousands, but for simpler products, obviously would be much less than that. Just because of the depth that you need to go into in terms of understanding every single ingredient that goes into a product. And so it's a very supply chain focused accreditation.
And I might just sort of wrap this up with the last question for the day from Tara, which is one that I was thinking of as well. Have your clients experienced suppliers not being willing to change their practices to be more sustainable? You know, do you have an example of that? How did that play out?
Yeah, there are ones playing out at the moment. Some suppliers come back and our clients are very surprised at the level of proactivity in sustainability that some of their suppliers have. I can think of one supplier that I've spoken to a client about where the supplier's in a really niche market and they don't really want to change and they kind of think they have the client over a barrel, which is very challenging. So the client is doing what they can with that supplier in terms of being able to move them gently along. But the other thing that the client is doing is making sure that that risk is well known by management. It is on a risk register. Management are signing off on the risk. The risks are really clear in terms of, you know, if this supplier isn't compliant with these expectations that we have, what is the risk to our business? And therefore, what are we doing about it? And that's a decision that management, of course, can take at any point in time. But part of that is, I suspect their management is going, I don't like the fact that we've only got one supplier that can supply this anyway. There's a risk mitigation strategy that we need in that way. But generally, suppliers are pretty supportive.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, you gave a lot of compelling reasons on why sustainability is important for business. So that's great to hear. Well, thank you so much for your time and your insights, Nicole.
No problem. It's always fun.
Awesome. Pass it over to Nat.
Yes, just thank you so much, Nicole, and obviously David for running and getting ThinkStep to share all their wisdom, especially in that responsible procurement area. And also thank you to all the participants that have joined in and asked questions. I hope you found this session valuable. As David alluded to earlier, the session has been recorded and will be shared later this week. So if you're wanting to share that within your organizations, or if you want to rewatch and get some, note down some learnings, you're welcome to do so. And please make sure to tune into tomorrow's webinar on Waste Free Tuesday. We are joined by a couple of speakers from different companies that will be covering the daily focus for tomorrow. So see you then.